Welcome, everybody. Welcome to quarter number 2 in our 3.5-year study through the Bible. We're getting ready to start a new quarter here. If you noticed in your questions, there's a little bit of an overlap between last lesson and this lesson, which is fine. We're going to spend a little extra time on some of those things maybe we didn't have time to spend on. This one, but that should help us out. Okay. All right. So as we've been doing, we're going to continue to give reminders about where we are so we don't lose track where on the road we are during this 3.5-year journey through the Bible. And so we're going to, once again, each class go through the periods so that we can, by the time it's all over, you'll be so tired of knowing so much about all of this. So let's go through the time periods up here. Before the flood, the scattering of the people, the patriarchs, the Exodus, the wandering in the wilderness, invasion and conquest, the judges, the united kingdom, the divided kingdom, Judah alone, captivity, return from captivity, the years of silence, the life of Christ, the early church, letters to the Christians. Okay. So here's the periods where we're going to be going through the whole 3.5 years, but we're right there at the end of, coming up to the end of the number 9 period, the United Kingdom and the divided kingdom. And so that brings us to this chart here, which reminds us of where we are today. And that is right at the end of David's period of reign here in 2 Samuel, 1 Chronicles, chapters 11 through 29, covering that period of David. And we'll be going into Solomon next week. Okay, so a lot to cover today, it seems like, but it's actually a small period of time, and so we're going to be whizzing through a couple things and unwhizzing through a couple of others. But these are all the areas we're going to be covering with the questions today. And we want to keep in mind that a couple of important applications, simple but yet very, very important. And the first one is this idea of looking at David's life and what can we get out of that. We know that he did many things to cover up his infidelity with Bathsheba. We're all familiar with that story. However, these accounts like this remind us of the sin that David committed. And specifically, we get that with the listing of Uriah the Hittite in the Mighty Men, which we didn't hear much about Uriah other than that one story. So the thing we need to remember with that, though, is there's nothing that we can hide from God that ultimately will not be revealed out there. So we want to keep that in mind as we're going through the lesson today. And also that God takes care of the righteous. Ultimately, he knows what's going on. David understood what it was like to be in God's hands. And that was something that strengthened him throughout his life. So as we get into the first question, and we're dealing once again with the idea of David's song of praise. And the question number 1 was, David's song of praise is recorded here for us. The time of its writing is not known specifically, but it appears to have been written sometime after the death of Saul. So David seems very confident in his relationship with God. So a couple of questions associated with that. Why should this cause us to have hope? What is it that's hopeful about this whole situation that David found himself in, his terrible situation, losing a child and everything? Go ahead, Shirley.
Well, David always had faith, and he was righteous, even though he did make mistakes like we do.
Okay.
And if we read through that, it ought to strengthen our faith, that even though we might make mistakes, we can be forgiven if we ask for forgiveness.
Did David understand the process that he needed to go through to get his relationship right with God? Do you think that was something he understood? How do we see that? Where in specifically the Bathsheba situation? Todd, you look like you're willing to answer on that one.
Say the question one more time.
Did David understand from his actions and the things that he said in the Psalms, Proverbs, and all the different things? Do you think he understood what the process or method was that he needed to use, that when he messed up, what he would need to do to get back in the right relationship with God?
Yeah, I think so. I noticed in this chapter you've got the words to one of our favorite songs, I Will Call Upon the Lord.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's verse 4. And then verse 47 is the chorus. As the Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock, and exalted be God, the rock of my salvation. So yeah, to answer your question, he knows that calling upon the Lord is the source of his salvation. It's not even making things right in his life. You can't bring Uriah back. You can't bring your son back. You can't fix Absalom or the Amnon situation. It's when he turns to God, puts his reliance on God, that he's going to be saved from his enemies.
Francis, you had a comment.
Comment also, knowing when he made the statement, the child cannot return, but he can go to the child. He knew enough to know that he could still be right with God, but he had to make that change in his life to go back to God.
So it wasn't just an accident that he kind of stumbled into doing the right things from time to time. He seemed very knowledgeable of what was necessary to do, and he was able to do it and have the courage to do it each time. Now, is that something that's possible for us? Do we have the sources and the resources necessary, Shannon?
Just like us, God's always with us, and even when we fall, we have him somewhere. He's with us. He's gonna help us. He's gonna catch us. He'll forgive us. But we don't use it as a crutch or as a backup or as a cushion, as a soft spot.
Yeah. So, Randy, go ahead.
The first thing that David did after he was told of his sin, when Nathan told him about it, he didn't try to get out of it. The phrase he said was, I have sinned. And he said that with remorse and truly repentant heart. Now, some people might say that because they've been caught, but he said it to be forgiven or to recognize that he had sinned. And of course, he had to suffer the consequences through all that. And then, as already been stated, when his son died, I mean, he was mourning the death of his son and trying to get God to change, to save his son's life. And so he mourned and was very sorrowful for sin. And then even with when the census was taken, he realized. So there's many examples in his life where he knew what to do when he was told that he had sinned. I think even when he had Uriah, killed, I mean, I believe in his heart, he may have known what was going on.
He might have felt a little guilt there. It seems to be the way. Yeah.
Again, sometimes it takes another brother or sister to jolt you just a little bit, and that's the reason we have good brothers and sisters, and we love each other. We want everybody to go to heaven. Simon the sorcerer is another example. When he was, told what was going to happen to him, he wanted prayers to be forgiven as well. Good attitude there from David.
Right, and so at the end you mentioned the idea of the attitude, and so we're talking about the condition of a person's heart, the type of heart that they had. And when God described David as a man after his own heart there in 1 Samuel 13, Acts 13, It's with the character and the nature of the person that he had developed over the years. And is that something that we can develop? Is that something that just comes naturally? I mean, David had the right genes or whatever? Or how do we develop that? Francis?
With our faith. With our faith.
With our faith. So,
We've gone through our life, we have seen hindsight that we were not alone.
so you have the idea of faith being the coupling of knowledge with action that then grows this character and this heart that was in there. Yeah, and God has designed his system, and we're going to talk about the providence of God today in part of our things here. But go over and turn to Ephesians chapter 1, verses 3 through 6. In this idea of predestination, denominations have a problem with getting this right, but God has no problem in his design of the system here. Notice what it says here in Ephesians chapter 1, starting in verse 3 through 6. It says, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places in Christ, just as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we would be holy and blameless before him. In love, he predestined us. In love, he predestined us to adoption as sons through Jesus Christ to himself, according to the kind intention of his will, to the praise of his glory, of his grace, which he freely bestowed on us." And so this idea of the design that God has put in place, that your heart is going to be the determining factor as to whether or not you're going to get it or not, and whether or not you're going to be doing those right things. And that heart is what needs to be developed as it goes along. And we see all through David's life him taking the opportunity to learn and then do. And that faith kept growing and growing and growing. So we need to be the type of person that has the heart that David has to be able to do that. So that's the first question here. The second question, what New Testament character also demonstrated this kind of confidence in his relationship to God? Can you think of one or more? April, you got a smile on your face. I bet you could think of one.
Paul demonstrated this confidence as he spoke of his assurance of the reward of heaven in Hebrews and most of the epistles.
Yeah, Paul gets a little leg up on everybody because he wrote more than everybody else, but we get a chance to see all the things that he went through. But yeah, why was Paul so confident in his relationship with God? And what was that confidence based on? What did Paul base that confidence on? You smiling again. Go ahead.
Just that his strong faith, and he knew that all of the suffering and everything that he had, that he endured as he was proclaiming the gospel, was not without purpose.
What's the basis of all of the hope that we have in this world? Paul had the same hope. What's the basis of all that?
Our knowledge of Christ and his resurrection.
The Christ and his resurrection, okay. The Old Testament characters didn't have that, but they had what? To buoy up their faith. Because David didn't have that, right? He didn't have the resurrection. What did the Old Testament characters have that we also have today?
They had the promises.
There,
They had
yeah.
the history of God with us in the temple and the tabernacle.
The foundation was based on those promises, wasn't it? And then the coming true of those promises, we see the confirmation of, through miracles and everything, all of that builds the faith as it goes forward and everything. So those promises, Jesus promised us a few things. If you go into, taking a look at a couple of these ideas here. Confidence based on Jesus' promises. What was the promise here? If you love me, keep my commandments, okay? So you go down there, so what does that mean? You go to verse 21 in John chapter 14. The one who keeps the commandments loves me, and the one who loves me is now loved by my Father. Oh, we're trying to get to the Father, aren't we? And we're getting there through Jesus, and it's through Jesus' love that we're coming in contact with God's love if we do what? Keep his commandments. And then in verse 23, if anyone loves me, he will follow my word. Oh, so it's the word that now connects me to the love and me doing that word. And then if you look at continuing with Paul's idea, it's 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 12. Where did Paul get his confidence? Look at what he's talking about here. For our proud confidence is what? It's the testimony of our conscience, a conscience that is with holiness and godly sincerity. With that, Paul's conducting himself in a manner that is doing what? Showing his love for Christ, which was when we keep his commandments, we're showing his love, the love for Christ. And that's why Paul can have that confidence in 2 Timothy in chapter 4. When he look, you notice down there in the third line down after judge, will award to me, not might award to me, could award to me. Paul was confident that there was an award that was coming to him because of what he did. Not something based on just maybe this will happen or anything, but on solid promises that if Jesus said, if you love me, keep my commandments. And all that love then that flows from the Father is because of that connection through all that. Todd, you got to... Okay. If you smile at me, I'm going to call on you. Yeah, so Paul's a great example of that. All right. So let's go on to question 2. Somebody in the back there? Could I get you to get me a cup of water? Post-accident stuff. Go ahead.
One other thing too is, during David's life, he put his trust and faith in God. And the same way with Paul. You remember he talked about all the things that he went to, and he's been in Philippians chapter 4. He says, I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. And in every circumstances, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. But then verse 13 says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I think that was the same attitude that David had in his life.
This connection between love, which is agape, which is doing what is best for somebody else when you love them, and doing what is best for somebody else many, many, many times. As a matter of fact, I would say all the time, if you're truly loving somebody, that you're getting the positive effects of that back on yourself. So it's a self-fulfilling thing that, how do you do that? How do you give more? When you give, you get back. When you love, you're getting back. It's because you're doing the right thing. And so all of this feeds into it. And David understood that. I mean, he, as he did the tough things in his life, he did the tough things, but it was the right things. And that's what got him going through there. Question 2. David's last words in 2 Samuel 23, 1-7 is considered the last psalm written by David. David considers himself very fortunate to have had this covenant relationship with God. And he states it in verse 5, for this is all my salvation and all my desire. So while David was not without sin in his life, he still puts all of his trust in God. So the question is, why should we do the same? Francis?
If we don't have God, who do we have?
Yes,
We know.
right.
We know through our lives. He's always been there. He promises he will always be there. We can leave him, but he will never leave us.
Well, and we don't have we don't have miracles and things that are going on in our life, and yet when you look around us outside today and look at the smiling faces in here, the love of the brethren, all of those things, that's God's providence at work. That's his system. That's his design for us. Go ahead, Sam.
Todd said about we have, is based on Christ's resurrection, and he's the one who says, what we are to do. We know that we're all in sin, and we know that God is our only hope to be saved from that sin. And it's not like if we try to avoid God because of our sin, that we can find some other alternate route that'll save us from it. I mean, he's the only way, and the God who we have confidence died and was resurrected tells us, well, you can be saved from your sins and from this eternal death that you'll face if you do what I say. Then logically it makes sense for us to do the same thing. We should have that faith, and we should put our trust in that man and in God.
Yeah, let's talk about evidences for a second when you consider God's providence. Can you think of some examples in David's life of God's providence in action? Any simple examples that would have had an impact on David's life? Go ahead, Tyler.
He chose 5 smooth stones from that brook. He
Yeah.
didn't know which one was going to hit Goliath, and the first one did. I don't know that that's a miracle, right? It's God providing because he put his trust in God.
Well, you think David ever practiced with throwing stones? Apparently some lions and bears and things found out about that, his quality in that. Yeah, those were things. Goliath certainly. How about Jonathan? Think about his relationship with Jonathan. Any miracles there with Jonathan? What was the outstanding thing, if you talk about God's providence, what would be the outstanding characteristic of that relationship that Jonathan and David had that is just purely part of the system? We use it all the time.
Well, of course, Jonathan was the one that told him that he would give him a sign of what his father was going to do. So
And why did Jonathan do that?
Lord, he loved David
He loved him. And in what way?
like a brother.
Like a brother, yeah, like brotherly love. We're talking about that deep friendship that is described that the brethren are to have for each other and all that. Is that a miracle of God? No, it's part of the system, isn't it? I mean, we're designed to have that kind of feeling and build. The system is designed to give us the best results when we have those relationships, isn't it? I mean, you can go through life and not have any relationships like that, and you're not going to work very well in this world that we live in. But outside of that, I mean, when you take advantage of those relationships and build them, nurture them, it works that way. How about some other biblical examples of God's providence? Anybody come to mind? Give me one. Come on, you guys can give me one. Joseph, yeah, that's the first one I thought of. Joseph, Ruth, Esther. Think of all the different ones that are there that give. And so this is the question we need to think about. Within God, the realm of God's providence, which is where we live all day long, all of our years of our life, are we working with God in that system, or are we working against God in that system? And what do you think the outcome's going to be, depending on the choice we make? And we could see adequate examples of this through David's life and the other people we've run across. Shimei and all those folks that David interacted with over the years. Okay, so let's go on to question 3. Who was that guy? Ishbi-Benob and Saph and Lami, and why was it a feat for David and his men to have killed these folks? What was the big deal? What was the outstanding characteristic that all 3 of those had in common? What was it? They were giants. Yes, they were. Yeah. Some people would say that, we're talking like 9.5 feet tall or more. some of these NBA players are getting pretty tall, but they're still not cracking 7.5 feet, with ease. So, yeah, so these folks, there were a number of things that made it so that this was something that they were pulling off here. And so we're not going to go into a lot of detail on this. I just want to cover one thing, and that is this guy, Lami, the brother of Goliath. And the only reason we wanted to mention is because there's a little bit of a difference between a couple of the accounts, the one in 1 Samuel 17 and the one in 1 Chronicles 20. One saying that, of course, David killed Goliath of Gath, or Goliath the Gittite. That means, Gittite means somebody of Gath. And 1 Chronicles 20, where it says Elkanah, one of David's mighty men, we had the situation of him, we're being introduced to a person named Lami, the brother of Goliath. Okay, so the way that you can most likely be able to understand kind of what happened in the situation is, if you look down at the bottom, right there, those two funny little squiggly things off to the left, those Hebrew characters right there. The first one is from 2 Samuel 21:19, and the second one below it is from 2 Chronicles 20 and verse 5. The one down below is, the only difference is that little tiny squirrely little mark up at the top on the left, okay? And other than that, the two characters are exactly the same. So you can see how easily in transcription that one little fold of the scroll, one little miss of the ink with that little jot or tittle that you put off of the side could easily be mixed or missed. In the 2 Samuel 21:19, that character up at the top actually is a character in the Jewish alphabet. But what it is it's more or less something that's not normally translated. It's normally a marker or a space, sort of like a little dash or something that you would put in to hold a spot for another word. Okay? And when you put the little on it down the bottom, instead of it being a nonsensical character or a placeholder in the script, it comes out to meaning the brother of. And so that's one of the reasons why, people think that it was probably a scribal error that caused them to make it so that it was David killing Goliath and Elkanah killing Goliath also. But the other thing is that the scriptures in the context where it talks about the brother of, those scriptures are in a part that where David is king. Whereas when it talks about the other one, the placeholder one, back in 2 Samuel, that's back at a time when back in chapter 17 where Saul was king. So again, you can put it in a combination of two things: the context of the words, the scripture that is around the event is one thing, and then that the nearness of that is another thing that goes with that. So if you want to do any research on that, there's a lot of articles that are written on things like this. We talked about it a few quarters ago when we were talking about the Hebrew language and the scrolls and all of the ancient scrolls and things like that. And so, all right, question 4. David's mighty men are listed in 2 Samuel 23 and 1 Chronicles 11. Name a few of the things that qualified them as mighty men. What was one thing that almost all of them had in common? They killed a lot of people, yes. It killed a lot of enemies of Israel. A lot of Philistines, but there were others too that David fought. So a lot of that. As far as their relationship with David, what did they all have in common? Great loyalty, yes. And we could see that in almost everything that went on that they were doing. It was always somehow in a relationship with what was going on with David. Kind of reminds me almost a little bit of the 12 disciples and kind of the relationship they had with Jesus, in that they were always with him, they were always around him, they were always wanting to take care of him, and those kinds of things, and it built up extreme loyalty and friendship. Courage, to say the least, was something, especially with the circumstances. The water example, going to get David water, just having said something, and they went through the entire camp, to go in and get one little drink of water for him. Just some pretty amazing things.
Hey, Norm.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about the phases of life, though, where they were with him out, essentially fleeing from Saul, right, as a fugitive, but also doing good, protecting Israel, like in the case of Abigail and Nabal. He's been protecting them. So they've been doing all this good, serving David, who's serving the Lord, but still being banished because of the wicked King Saul. Now finally put in power and doing good at the behest of the good king. So you can imagine how loyalty grows through those phases. Right,
And we're gonna see when we look at who got appointed to what positions and things like that a little bit later on. We're gonna see them show up again with that. So question 5 now. It's of course obvious, that it took great strength, courage, valor, and all that. But we're talking about the mighty men, but who else do we need to kind of keep in mind, because they were just reflecting their leader's personality in the things that they were doing. If we're going to be talking about the mighty men of Israel, Jesse, what do you think?
Well, verses 10 and 12 says the Lord brought about a great victory. So I'd say the Lord.
Oh, nice. Yeah, absolutely, I would say.
I thought that's what you were asking.
No, but that's I hadn't thought of that specifically, but yeah, that would certainly be one. Who are they? Who else were they reflecting besides God's will? Who else were the mighty men reflecting? Yeah, David. Yeah, I mean the leader, the followers, good followers tend to reflect the leader that's out there, and so yeah, he's in there. Uriah the Hittite is someone that is interesting. He's added to both lists, both times that the mighty men are brought up and everything, and we only get that one little picture, and it's not a very good picture of David at the time, but it paints a wonderful, beautiful picture of the qualities that Uriah had. So again, he's somebody that we want to always remember in the mighty men. Question 6. David had been collecting up gold, silver, bronze, iron for many years in preparation for the building of the temple in Jerusalem. So how much did he have, and where had all this come from? It just in round figures. Now, would caution you, don't try to go and get a modern equivalent for how many talents of gold, for instance. I mean, it's hopeless trying to do that. As people talk about $37 an ounce or $74 an ounce. Obviously, the values of things go up and down. What could you say, though, when it came to the amount of gold, the amount of silver, the amount of iron, the amount of brass, the amount of wood? Did David do a good job of preparing? Was David a wealthy man when he was king? Oh, yeah. Yes, he was. So we're talking about a lot of gold. I mean, the Bible talks about 100,000 talents, 1,000,000 talents of silver. Bronze and iron, they didn't even try, just beyond weight. And when you talk about covering the entire inside of the temple with gold plating and all of this kind of stuff. You can imagine just what it was going to take. And imagine the smell of inside of the temple with it all being made of cedar wood and all of that. You imagine, how many have had cedar closets or cedar chests and had that beautiful cedar smell? That, I mean, just, yeah, an amazing thing to think about. So where did all this stuff come from? David was an old shepherd boy. Where did he get all this money? Hedge fund trading? Or what was the trimming hedges? Well, okay, so you had David and the nobles contributed themselves out of their private stock. David, he contributed the gold of Ophir, which was the finest gold in the world that was out there. So all of that, but I think about all the tribute from all of the nations that were conquered, that David conquered. You think of the relationships he had with Tyre and Sidon. And it was over a period of years that David collected all this. He'd been wanting to do this for a long time. So let's just say there's a lot of money involved with this. They were well able to do well beyond what was necessary to get it done. All right, question 7. David counted and organized the Levites and also created 12 groups of 24,000 soldiers. So what was the purpose of all this? So let's just get right into, I want to do a quick little review here and remembering where things came from, okay, because we're many years later than we were back in Numbers 3. Numbers 3, there was a census back then, and that was when they were just starting the Exodus, and then we have 1 Chronicles 23, where we have another census being taken, and that's when Solomon's going to be taken over. So you remember, we started, for the priests, we start with Levi, and then he had the 3 sons. And Kohath was the one we were most interested in, because he had Amram, and then Amram had Miriam, Aaron, and Moses. And we're most interested in Aaron because that's the priestly line. He had 4 sons. We know what happened to Nadab and Abihu. And so Eleazar and Ithamar were the only ones that are left there. Moses, his folks, Miriam, all of her kids, everybody, they all went up into Kohath and became part of that group, okay? So what did the Kohathites do? What was the big job of the Kohathites? Anybody remember? Just in general, what was their job? And now we saw back here, right? Kohath. Hint, hint, hint. All right, yes, they were the priest folks. So they were the ones that were dealing with all of the things in the temple, in the tabernacle, okay, as they were going through the holy furnishings, all of that. And Eleazar was the son of Aaron, of course, and he was kind of the chief of the leaders of the three families in there. So their actions are not going to change very much as far as what they were going to do once the temple got built. Now the Gershonites and the Merarites, the Gershonites and the Merarites, they were involved with moving the tent. Okay, and the tent consisted of two different things. What was the one thing that they got done? They had to move all the coverings, so all the materials and all the hangings and stuff, and Ithamar, the other son, was in charge of that group. And then the Merarites, they're the ones that were breaking down all the things that actually were the structure for the tent. Okay? And Ithamar, again, oversaw their duties. So Eleazar took care of the priests. Ithamar took care of the other things in moving the tent. Now, how many times was the temple going to have to move? What? Never. That's right. Oh, we're looking at the unemployment line here for a whole bunch of God's folks that are very important. So as we think about that, okay, some things we're going to have to change. And so, again, we have the Numbers 3 census versus 1 Chronicles 23. Notice this is about 500 years between these two. We're talking about 1446 when the Exodus started. The census then of the Levites, 30 years and older, was 8,580 of them. Now, in 970 BC, when they're getting ready to start building the temple, there's 38,000 men in that age group. So there's a lot of folks that are looking for things to do, all right? So now one thing you want to remember in all of this, every single thing that God set up for scheduling, working, who's going to do what when, was all done by lots. Okay, so everything, timing, scheduling, all of that was always done by lots, which means who's controlling it? I heard it over here. God is, that's right. Lots means God's controlling the selection. Okay, so the Levites, how were they broken down? 24,000 of them, of the 38,000, were to oversee the work in the temple that was going to be going on, the religious practices, all of that. And so you had the sons of Aaron. They were actually from Eleazar, there were 16 sons. There were in Ithamar's lineage, there were 8 at this time. So there were a total of 24 priests that could, versus 2 after Nadab and Abihu got killed. Remember, there were only 2, Eleazar and Ithamar. So the 24 of them basically did all of the priestly duties, and those duties were on there and didn't change. The sons of Merari, Gershon, and Kohath, in other words, the remainder of the 24,000, other than the 24 priests, the remainder of them did whatever the 24 priests needed them to do. Okay? So everything that it was, and we're talking about everything from purifying holy things, making the showbread, measuring out exact portions of flour and all those things, leading praise during Thanksgiving, celebrations, festivities, things like that, helping the priests put together the burnt offerings and the incense burnings and all those kinds. Not doing those things, but providing whatever assistance the priests needed. And you can tell where there's thousands of animals coming in. There's a lot of cleanup. There's movement of the animal carcasses. There's all that, bringing them. All of that, the priests were not doing that. These guys were doing that for them to help them out. And they're basically watchmen over everybody. And then you had 6,000 officers and judges. Remember the cities of refuge that were out there, where people were supposed to go to the city of refuge if they were somebody that was a murderer, manslaughter, things like that. And remember, these were Levite cities and the places where judgments would occur and stuff. And so David was concerned about the tribes, especially the 2.5 tribes that were on the east side of the Jordan River. And so these 6,000 officers and judges not only conducted the administration, but they also did other duties of taking care of those 2.5 tribes that were out there. And then you had 4,000 gatekeepers. How many gates were in the temple? We're going to find that later on. But 8. There were 8 of them. And so 4,000 gatekeepers to keep track of those. And then 4,000 musicians. So at this time, of course, there were musicians that were associated with this. And then real quick, I'll just give you the standing army thing. This is fairly simple. 288,000 men in the standing army. It was broken down into 12 divisions of 24,000 each, and each division had a commander. Think of it as one division was on active duty each month, and it went through by lots as to who was going to be in place. Their commander, the commander of that division, if they activated other troops to do stuff, that commander was the commander of all the army that was activated, okay? So you could activate up to 12 divisions and have all that in place. So, and they did all that. Now, that's a lot of folks to be kept and have regular reserve duty. Norm's on reserve duty this morning with the guard, so he would have been one of those inactive folks. So, again, remember this. 1 Samuel 8, verses 7 through 22, and that's where we'll stop for today, is there was a warning about what a king would demand. think about that as we go into the lesson for next week, which we will be starting right here on this question. Question 8, David assembles Israel to tell of his plans.